is your answer to that question, Mr. Roban? What's the PLP's answer about the declaration?
We have concerns that that declaration will not necessarily stand up in a future court of law if tested.
Can you shed some light on the, they're saying that the advice was given to the PLP back in 2006 or whatever. Was it given and was it rejected on that ground?
The leader will respond to that question.
Thank you. I think that the One Bermuda Alliance government, especially cabinet ministers, are going to quickly realize that by sitting in cabinet, they will receive numerous amounts of unsolicited and solicited advice and reports. The fact that you receive reports doesn't determine whether or not the cabinet and the government will actually act on the report that's been received. In this case, a Queen's Counsel did offer advice to the government regarding term limits, and the government, looking at the issue in a holistic manner, decided to continue the course or policy direction that they had initiated at that time. And so yes, we did receive a report with advice on term limits in 2006, but it doesn't mean that we're obligated to follow it.
Was it rejected on legal grounds or political grounds?
I wouldn't be able to confirm because I wasn't in the cabinet at that time.
Can I also add to what the leader said? It seems as if the OBA is, despite having made a decision in early January to immediately to get rid of the term limit policy, they are continuously blaming and making the PLP responsible for decisions, tough decisions that they've made, whether it be erasing the term limit policy. They tried to accuse my leader of being associated with that decision. They have done the same thing with the issue of the children of non-permit holders, making the children who will not have permits, the 19-year-olds, that they associate that with a former PLP minister. And they keep going back and trying to associate the PLP after 3 months with decisions that they are making. How is that governance? They should make their decisions and stand by them. They said they were going to be decisive. Be decisive. Stop trying to align your decisions with former PLP ministers.
And there is a degree of contradiction and irony when you listen to the One Bermuda Alliance say, they harp on the fact, especially during the budget debate, you heard them speaking of the last 14 years and you didn't do it and now we're cleaning up your mess. And they dwell on the 14 years of governance by the Progressive Labor Party. But in the first instance that we remind them that looking back in the past, they are actually the United Bermuda Party rebranded. Then they take offense and they don't want to dwell on the past. They don't want to look backwards. So they only use it when it suits their convenience. And so that's been a pattern that was seen in the first 100 days, which indicates that the One Bermuda Alliance wasn't prepared to take the mantle of governing this country, and it might have came as a surprise to them. Now they just have to humble themselves because they have made junior or rookie errors as a result, I think, of excitement of winning and also buying into the myth that they are the best and brightest that this country has to offer. And so now they have to transition from getting over that excitement and put their hands in the soil and make decisions based on the collective responsibility of cabinet and stand on those decisions in their own space without having to use the Progressive Labor Party as a rationale or justification for their decisions.
Mr. Roban, when it comes to the licensing, I could be wrong, but I thought I heard the minister explain to the press conference that I attended that there was a great deal of chicanery going on in this licensing scene. I thought they explained that, and they said that those who could not afford the licensing should then apply for assistance. I thought that was cleared up at that time.
Well, I haven't heard this statement by the minister that you say, but the fact of the matter is that they made a promise to ensure free transportation for seniors, and then they went back and made the license 50% more They added 50% of the price of the license back on to seniors. That is reneging on a promise. Now, as it relates to the relief, we will have to see how that's going to work, because our own Shadow Attorney General made it clear that the changes that the government has made, the One Billion Alliance has made, actually nullifies the ability to get that relief. So ultimately, we will see what happens past April 1st, when seniors are subjected to this increased fee, and then those who cannot afford it have to find a way to deal with it. Whether there will be relief, ultimately we will find out from the Transport Control Department.
And as a result of that announcement by the current government, it's created some confusion for seniors. And they go to TCD and they are applying and looking for exemptions, and the exemptions ain't available to be offered. And that is a result of the miscommunication or misleading of the public coming from the One Bermuda Alliance government. When we are up in Parliament discussing this piece of legislation, the Honorable and Learned Member, the Attorney General Marc, he got up and he made it seem as if the Progressive Labour Party had already put in legislation to continue to do what the OBA was proposing to do. And I will give the Attorney General credit. He is extremely theatrical. I think one can describe him as similar to the late, great Julian Hall when in Parliament. But theater doesn't equate to facts or to truth. And so as a result, a lot of confusion has been created. I think that our Shadow Attorney General, Ms. Kim Wilson, cleared it up subsequently, that when the decision was made to give free licensing to our seniors, it was outside the remit of any existing legislation. And so the bill that we passed subsequently a few years ago, or a year ago, was meant as a legislative housekeeping duty to ensure that what concessions and benefits we gave to our seniors can be found firmly within the existing legislation. Now, the Attorney General, Mr. Pettingill, took that and aided and abetted, unfortunately, by the media, who took it for face value. They went and reported it, and it gave the appearance of something that was in existence that is actually not in existence. So that's unfortunate, and now I have been told that Transport Control Department and seniors are having some challenges and some issues with this gray area in the law and within policy, and hopefully the One Bermuda Alliance government can rectify it as soon as possible, not forgetting the benefits that should be, and our position is, these are benefits that should be given to our seniors regardless, because when you have people who have sacrificed to build this country where it's at the least we can do is to ensure that the aged are protected. And this is one of the policy initiatives that we put in place to uphold that principle of respecting and loving our elders.
Can I just, as I'm probably the only senior in this room, I suspect.
No.
Obviously, I would be the beneficiary of this licensing thing, which obviously, because my license was due before April 1st, then I was okay. But is it fair to say that there was so much dishonesty attached to this licensing thing by people who were not seniors, that someone had to arrest this person?
Absolutely. And what the Motor Car Amendment Act still hasn't addressed, the enforcement side of the issue. So you still have some loopholes whereby younger persons can use the great auntie or great uncle or parents' assessment number and home and name to go ahead and get a vehicle without paying the licensing fees. And that is a point that we drove home during the debate, that we shouldn't make a separation between the two, and the approach has to include effectual enforcement of those who are trying to find that loophole to not pay their taxation. Now, it's another point that the Honorable Minister of Finance, or it could have been the Minister of Transport and Tourism, indicated that as a result of this shift in the Motor Car Amendment Act, government will look to make at least $1.75 million back to the consolidated fund. And all under the mantra is that we need to build revenues and we need to get to a more solid fiscal position. 1.5 or $1.75 million. But yet the week prior, they went and they increased the tax rate for corporate service providers, which are a key component of our international business sector, from 6% to 8%. So we're getting mixed messages. We're getting tax increases in some parts of international business, tax concessions for employers to hire new Bermudians, and then we're actually increasing the taxation on our seniors. And it seems to be arbitrary and haphazard. And oftentimes when you have that type of leadership or governance, ultimately it's our younger people and our elders who suffer the most.
I think it should be asked, is the recovery that the OBA desires going to be built on the backs of working people and our children and our seniors? You know, who are they going to build it on? Are they going to build it on the least able to afford, or are they going to build it on the people who can most contribute to the recovery? That's a question, because the policies that my leader has described have sent mixed messages as to who they're going to build our recovery on.
But in regards to licensing, wouldn't it be fair to say that the younger people were the ones who are robbing the seniors of the benefit? Because it was a 300% increase in licensing vehicles class H during that time when it was implemented, which is why they're saying that they now make it A through, I think it's D or E, who has the exemption, but any car above that has to pay. So, I mean, it seems like it's the youth who were actually robbing the seniors.
I wouldn't say robbing the seniors. They certainly did a disservice to the seniors, because it created an enforcement issue. If anything, they weren't paying taxes or avoiding taxes to the government. Now, if you want to call that robbing or not, that's fine. But the outcome of it, the effect is that the seniors, collectively, regardless of which income bracket you live within as a senior, everyone in that demographic over 65 have to suffer. So you have to ask yourself, one, you have young people who are willing to use that loophole, but then you had seniors who are willing for that loophole to be allowed to be used. And so in the end, you have the majority of seniors in the country who, again, man, you want fixed incomes. Something like a $300 or $600 increase in your taxes for a vehicle is a hard hit on many a senior. And so again, that's why we emphasize the need first to look at the enforcement side to close the loophole. But we shouldn't look to, in closing the loophole, I wouldn't say punish our seniors, but take a benefit from our seniors that fiscally we can find the revenue shortfall elsewhere in our budget. For instance, cut down on some of the consultants that they used as a political football for almost 18 months. Cut down on your travel budget, if you so desire. Now, we made it clear that as a government, we expect you to travel, unless we want to live in isolation and expect everyone to come to us to do business. That's not how the world runs. But if you are seeking to bring some fiscal prudence, you shouldn't look to sacrifice those on fixed incomes, those who built the foundation and the walls and the roof of this country called Bermuda. When our generation's coming along and we're benefiting from the actual structure itself, why should we punish those who actually built it? And so it requires a little bit more balanced thinking. And it does have trade-offs when you're dealing with a budget. But as my MP Roban said, the question is this balancing of the budget, this ideal, can come on the backs of the most vulnerable in society, which in our position as the Progressive Labour Party, the new PLP, the most vulnerable in society are our young people and our seniors. Everyone else who is quite capable of working and doing for self, we encourage them to do for self. But the government can and should have some type of safety net for our young and our elders.
Do you know how much they've actually spent on travel since assuming office, or have you spent on consulting?
No, you can expect parliamentary questions to that effect to come when we resume in Parliament on May the 10th. Now, we have had some travel. We know there has been some travel, and naturally, that's natural. We expect the Tourism and Transport Minister to travel. We expect the Premier to travel, and we certainly expect the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Economic Development to travel. And so we're not going to use it as a political football, because we have the experience of governing and governing without looking at political expediency and making everything that should be normal an issue. And that's something that the One Bermuda Alliance did, and now it's coming back to haunt them. And so that's why we say it's important to have a degree of humility and humbleness. Yes, get over the excitement that you won the election. To the victor goes the spoils. But for the 51% of the people who voted for the One Bermuda Alliance on December 17th, they are not pleased with the performance of the One Bermuda Alliance. The One Bermuda Alliance has not shown the trust, or reciprocated the trust and faith that the people gave and put in them by their actions and their deeds. And it's been a continuous string of errors and mistakes that comes as a result of a lack of humility, a lack of willing to learn from the mistakes of others, and a desire to remember that, in fact, because you're the government, the people don't serve you, you serve them. And so that should be the foundation going forward for the One Bermuda Alliance. We do not wish the One Bermuda Alliance to crumble or to disintegrate or to take this country down the drain. Not for the sake of us becoming the government again, because in that case the whole country suffers. And then we'll have to inherit and clean up an even bigger mess. That's not what we're desirous of seeing. So we've been offering suggestions to the One Bermuda Alliance as a result of our experiences. Now, suffice it to say, we made some mistakes in our 14 years of governing. We have admitted it. Shadow Minister David Brett of Finance, he has admitted it. I have admitted it. But at the same time, we did a lot of good things for this country too. And so as a result of that accumulation of experience, we seek to offer advice and suggestions to the One Bermuda Alliance if they are willing to listen. If they're not willing to listen, then they end up making the same mistakes or even more mistakes than we did. And that is unacceptable, I think, to the people of this country.
The OBA was never known as an effectual opposition. Does this show in the mistakes or blunders being made now with them as being government?
Absolutely. They were not an effective opposition. I could recall for the year leading up to the election, the Cohen premier, and we were very cordial, but he spoke for a total of maybe 6 minutes and 200 words in Parliament for a whole year as the leader of the opposition. And yes, their numbers were smaller, and yes, they did have some members that were very effective in keeping the PLP to the fire. I understand that. But again, they were not expecting to win in December. And so now they find themselves in uncharted waters and in territory that they have no experience in navigating. And you can see the results thereof. And no, it doesn't bode well for the country going forward. But at the same time, all it takes is a dose of humility, which is something that we got a large measure of on December 17th, right? For their part, they can apply some humility, and many of the pitfalls and mistakes that they have made over the last 100 days, they will be able to safely navigate around this by measuring twice and cutting once.
So do we leave this at the doorstep of the inexperience or the naivety of the new members, or do we look squarely at the former members of former parties, the experienced politicians who should know that?
Well, if the media takes the time to observe the operations of the House of Assembly, you will find that it is only the senior former United Bermuda Party members that are giving any contribution in the House of Assembly. When I think of the members who were not attached to the United Bermuda Party back in the day, it's about 7 or 8 of them as members of Parliament, and together they have spoken for a total of probably 7 minutes. And that's about 6 or 7 members combined. Now you compare that with many of the Progressive Labour Party's new MPs, and they have been getting stuck in from day one, because that's what we expect of them. You either sink or swim in politics. And so as a leader, I'm not going to shy or protect my MPs. The people voted them in to come up into that house to give a sound and rational contribution to the issues of the day, not to sit up there and sit quietly in the chairs and allow a core group of 6 or 7 senior politicians to take the lead on every single issue. And so it is a difference. And I guess it's a learning curve, but it's the reality.
So in your opinion, are the voters getting what they bargained for? They were looking for a new way.
Well, see, that's the challenge when you campaign on a mantra called change, okay, and the hope of change. Psychologically, that is a broad brush that covers a lot of ground, but does not give nothing definitive as to what that change really represents. And so the people voted for change. Now you have to ask them, is this the change that they were expecting? I would suggest that the majority of the people in this country, whether they voted for the One Bermuda Alliance, didn't vote, or voted for the Progressive Labor Party, are not getting what they expected from the One Bermuda Alliance government. But that's what happens when you give a very fluffy brand and terminology like it's time for change without defining what that actually will mean in reality.
You've talked about, earlier you talked about a new PLP.
Yes.
What does that mean in reality? What are the 3 key differences between the new PLP and
the new PLP, for one, was the opposition. Well, not the government.
Which you didn't expect.
2, you see a change in the legislature, a burst of new energy from MPs and senators. And I think most importantly, 3 is it represents a shift in consciousness and action and a shift on the political spectrum. We say now that if we are pro-labor, we must be pro-business. So that naturally indicates a shift of the party towards the center, but a shift that doesn't forget the need of the working man and helping people help themselves. We also speak of the need to do for self and to move away from the historical conversation of us against them based on race, and more to the philosophy that the Lord respects a man, or people respect you when you respect yourself, and the Lord helps those who help themselves. So I think the newness and the rejuvenation come from the party is based on self-improvement. And that starts with humility and humbleness, which acknowledges the mistakes that you made, and also put yourself and put your mind into a position where we can look to improve without repeating those mistakes of the past. So we are evolving, absolutely. And there's a newness of the Progressive Labor Party, and I think it's represented in myself as the leader, but also the representation within Parliament and the representation within our executive and central committee. The way we go about doing business internally has shifted from the past. It's much more disciplined. It's much more ordered. We have meetings that used to take 3 hours that now take approximately 60 minutes. So we're looking to be efficient and effective in doing the people's business. And so again, that comes as a result of humbleness and reflection and acknowledging some of the errors that we have made in the past and not looking to repeat them.